and welcome to the College Basketball Road to Madness show. And it was a maddening weekend this weekend. Pretty much every top team went down this weekend. So are you ready to get into our Road to Madness show? Because it was a crazy, crazy weekend this weekend.
Yeah, we got a little bit of the March Madness in February this year because I don't think we've ever seen something like 7 of the top 10 teams all losing on the same Saturday.
Yeah, definitely so. All right, so we got 3 parts to this show. We're going to take a look, due to that craziness, on who our favorites are to win the national championship to get to the Final Four. Then we're going to switch things up. We're into the conference tournament season, a handful of conference tournaments this week. We're going to preview and give you some picks and maybe a couple sleepers you might want to take a shot on there. And then we'll get to the best matchups in the week. We aren't going to go over any of those matchups in the tournament because we're previewing it, so it's just the matchups that are still in their regular season this week. All right, so let's get into our NCAA championship and Final Four. You're out of money here. We're going to Loan Shark Sammy B. He's going to loan you $2,000. You have $2,000. You're going to let it ride on your national championship for college basketball. You're going to let it ride for your Final Four. I'm curious to hear who you got. I allocated a bunch to Final Four teams. I got a handful of national championships teams. What were your balance? I will say this is probably as deep as I probably ever in my life gone. Certainly on teams I think could get to the Final Four, and I even made a couple cuts on ones I thought could also get there.
Yeah, I think this definitely not going to be a chalk year come tournament time for sure. It's going to be very hard to predict. I took it. I broke the 2,000. I put 1,000 into each, so I've got 1,000 for champion and 1,000 for Final Four. But I took my champion and hang on just one second. Sorry, I took my champions and I divided it into 5 segments, and I've got my Final Four divided into 4 teams. And I put 250 on the Final Four teams each and 200 on my champion picks. So
all right,
I've taken some shots, but I'm putting some money on them for sure.
All right, let's start things out with the Final Four. I had a bunch of teams thrown in here. Now, I will say I took a couple of these teams out. I didn't think there was a lot of value in Kentucky. I didn't think there was a ton of value in Duke. Also, I didn't think there was really any value at all in teams like Auburn. Their odds just seemed really, really low. I'm curious, did you go more, the top level chalk teams who we think are sitting there, or did you spread it around a little bit and go a little bit more towards the bottom side of things, trying to hit one or two maybe long shots that sneak into that Final Four?
I've got a couple longer shots. I got a couple favorites because there's just a couple teams I can't get off of that that are towards the top that I really like, but I've got a couple that I think the value is pretty solid.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to go. My biggest play of all these is Gonzaga Final Four at -115. I did not think there was a ton of value here, but even after that loss over the weekend to St. Mary's, if there's one game they're going to lose every year, it might be that one going into St. Mary's. So I don't factor that one up too much. Pretty much even money here. So I allocated $500 on Gonzaga into my Final Four. I was going to take, at least a little bit of that chunk of change with the team I think is pretty much a lock, especially out west, to at least get to that Final Four. So Gonzaga was one of my Final Four teams. Funny enough, though, I didn't think their value for national championship at like 4-1 interest. So my only play on them is at, -115 Final Four. Any play on Gonzaga for you?
I've got a play on them at the championship play, just because the value was a little sweeter than the Final Four. So I got $200 on them at the +400, just because I think they're going to be the odds-on favorite. But their competition hasn't been huge. They dropped that one early to Alabama, which was kind of one of the few games where they went out of conference for a tough matchup. But I I like that value at 400 for someone who's got pretty good odds of getting there.
Yeah. That's why I think I went with just the big Final Four, get my even money payout, and then I think that's where I sprinkled it. Hope Gonzaga gets in there, and then maybe I hope to hit one of these long shots. Give me your next team up on your Final Four list.
Next up on my Final Four list, okay, I'm sorry. I don't think I've named any of my Final Four teams yet at this point. Gonzaga's a championship team, but I guess I could put a bet at the Final Four, but I've just got to bet on them at the championship because I didn't like the value of the Final Four.
All right. I'll go next on my Final Four, and this is one where I got the two for there. I got Baylor. I got Final Four at plus 300. I thought there was pretty solid value there. I think they've been pretty consistent all year long. I allocated $200 on the Final Four there. If you look at their losses, they've all been pretty solid, versus strong competition, usually on the road losses. And then I sprinkled $100 on national championship there at 16-1. I thought that was pretty good value.
Yeah.
You're talking about a team who's the defending champion, and really, you go back 2 years, they could be looking at a three-peat here because I think them and Gonzaga were way, way ahead of the pack during that COVID year, and I think either one of those were pretty solidly going to land in the national championship game there. So I went Baylor, 300 on the Final Four for $200, and then 1,600. I went $100 on the national championship odd. Any play for Baylor with you?
Yeah, I double dipped on Baylor as well. They're one of my favorite teams going into this tournament. Just they've kind of had their ups and downs this season, but they're kind of getting back to where we expected them here with that big win over Kansas the other day. But I've got $250 on Baylor to meet to the Final Four at the plus 300, and then another 200 on the plus 1,600 national championship. I think that's really good value for one of the, in my opinion, probably one of my favorite picks for national championship.
Yeah, if I was going to say national championship wise, the best value I saw for teams I think we probably consider elite, I thought 16-1 for Baylor was probably the best I saw in that pack. Certainly, when you factor in sort of the drop off after Gonzaga, Auburn, those sort of teams, they seem to chunk a line there and then put those Baylors in there, and I can't say that I don't think Baylor isn't right in that group as well.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to go with one you and I probably have been hot and cold on all year, Villanova. I thought there was pretty good value here. Final Four at plus 400. If they hit the right stretch and get the right matchup, we haven't talked about it, but this is kind of hard to do if we don't get a little preview into who they're running into in the first, second, Sweet 16 here. By the Elite Eight, you assume you're going to play a pretty good team here. But so at plus 400 for Final Four, I went 200 on them as well. I thought they have a really, really good shot. I think they match up with a lot of different styles of team. And then I threw 100 on them for national championship at 25-1. I played it, and, you think about it, this tournament gets played 25 times. You think they win one of those? I think if this tournament gets played 25 times, there might be 2 or 3 of those scenarios where they come out with a national championship. So I thought that was pretty good value. So I went Villanova, 400, 200 on the plus 400 for Final Four, and 100 on the 2,500 for national championship. So I really, probably my two favorites are Baylor and Villanova, money-wise. I thought there was best value there. Any love on Villanova for your side of things?
I didn't give them any love on the Final Four play just because plus 400 wasn't quite enough for me on them. But I did take a stab. I put 200 on the national championship odds at the 25-1. This is a really battle-tested Villanova team, non-conference and Big East Conference schedule. They've been kind of through the ringer. They've got a few solid road wins, so I like this team, and I think they're going to be really ready for tournament play. Yeah.
The 400 wasn't as great as I thought, like Baylor's 300 for Final Four, but, you could probably easily also talk me into Villanova if they catch the wrong matchup, get a bad seed, possibly losing in that first round too. It's not, totally out of the whims there, so maybe that's not as great a bet. But I think if they get hot, and are healthy, I think they have a nice chance to stretch run. Next up, I double dipped on this team as well. This one, I didn't go as heavy on national championship, but I think they've shown pretty solid. I went Texas Tech. Plus 500 for Final Four. I put $100 on because I think their style of play, I think we've talked about how we both really, really probably respect the Big 12 more than any other conference this season in college basketball. A lot of really, really good teams, top to bottom in that. We've seen Texas Tech recently, work their way into a Final Four. They just missed the Final Four the year before that in a tough Elite Eight matchup with Gonzaga. So I think this team, no Chris Beard, but I think it still has the remnants enough to make a run to the Final Four. So at plus 500, I put 100 on that. And I thought the value-wise at 33-1 was worth a $50 shot for national champion, because I certainly see a scenario where this team hits a nice little run here and could win a national championship. They were just in the final game a couple years ago, and I still think there's enough quality players in there to really at least take a shot at 33-1. I thought there was pretty good value there. Any love for you on the Texas Tech side of things?
Surprisingly, no. I've been a little worried. Yeah, they're getting a little hot here, but their consistency's been kind of iffy throughout the year, and so I don't know if they're going to be steady enough to navigate all the way through to a Final Four national championship. So no love for me on my last $2,000 from Vinny here. No love for Texas Tech for the Dynamite.
No love for Texas Tech.
I'm going to go ahead and throw out one team that I've been big on all year, and that's the Kentucky Wildcats. Not huge value. They're one of the bigger favorites, but I think you've got to throw some money on them just because I think they're almost a lock for the Final Four, especially if their guards are healthy.
Yeah.
They really depend on their guard play to maintain their success. But I've got a $250 play on them in the Final Four on that plus 175, and then I've got another $200 at the championship at plus 800.
All right.
So double dipping with Kentucky there.
Yeah. Kentucky was on my sheet, and I was trying to sort of allocate the funds, and value-wise, I just didn't see a ton of great value. And really, why I didn't see a ton of great value is I'm a little nervous health-wise. I think we've basically been saying when Kentucky has Ty Washington, they're an elite team, but you've been saying that for 6 weeks, and every time he pops back up, he goes back down. And that just, it just sort of makes me nervous, especially for the price that they're getting. They're basically the number 2 favorite next to Gonzaga. And I think counting on health from them at this point, after we haven't seen it all year long to value, I was just like, I don't want to put any of my funds on them. I'd rather just ride, Gonzaga Final Four and put, all my funds into that instead of splitting it up with Gonzaga and Kentucky. So I stayed away from Kentucky just because I'm a little scared health-wise, whether they can stay healthy for the rest of the season, and if these guys want to, too. A handful of these guys are going to go to the NBA, draft. How much do they want to risk injury playing in these types of games? So I kept that in mind, and I just they were one of my last cuts on this list. All right, next up, one I just did solo, Final Four. Alabama at plus 900 for Final Four. Now, I just did a $50 ride on here, but 50 pays 450 if they can get to the Final Four. We've seen this team be able to play with and beat, pretty much all these top teams. We just talked about winning national championships and winning Final Fours. So I thought it was worth, at least a $50 flyer that Alabama could make a run here and certainly get to the Final Four. At plus 900, I thought there was pretty good value there.
Oh, yeah. I don't have a Final Four play on Bama, but I do have a long shot championship play on Alabama. I think, as we know, the tournament
season doesn't start for another 4 months. I think you're on the wrong show.
I just, as much as Shackelford's playing like one of the best players in the country right now, and guard play really determines success in the tournament. And we've seen time and time again where one particular star guard can carry a team all the way through. So I'm taking the long shot stab at them for the national championship at the plus 5,500. So really good value there. I got $250 on that. So I'm going to win big if
you'll
Bama
be able
wins
to pay back your loan there, even with if there's a big vig on it. So you'll be able to pay it back if Alabama makes their run to the championship.
All right. Well, I think we've got all my championship picks out there, but I've got a few more Final Four long shots. One I liked, I've got $200 on UConn at plus 1,600. I think they're another kind of like Villanova. They're a team that's kind of been through the works, and what I think is an underrated Big East. Big East used to get a lot of the love before the breakup, and some of those teams left that conference. But I still think it's a very strong conference, and I really like this UConn team climbing back into power.
Yeah. Funny you should say that. I know it's going to shock you, but I actually have a combo play here on UConn. I thought their numbers were really, really good. 1,600 for Final Four, 6,600 for national championship. And, I don't want to really say this factors, but we've had a handful of these tournaments where I don't think there's a real handful of teams that we go, those are the best teams they're going to win. And in a couple of those years in the past that we've seen, that seems to be when a weird UConn team sort of sneaks in and wins a national championship. I can think of 2 national championships that they have where it's sort of been a mucky tournament, and we're like, who's good, who's bad? And, UConn ends up winning the national championship, And I just started to think, we're in another one of those probably tournaments. UConn's been good, sort of out of the limelight. I don't think anybody could tell you that they couldn't win 6 games, in a row here in this tournament, and I just saw the value there. So I actually went 100 and 100 on both national championship and Final Four, just because, granted, it's been with different coaches, Kevin Ollie, and, it's always a little weird, but this UConn team sort of has a way to sort of sneak their way into a Final Four and into a championship. So 100 and 100 on a 16-1 and a 66-1 long shot, I thought was pretty good value there, even though they probably aren't even really talked about all that much. But they certainly, I could see them capable of winning 6 games here.
Yeah, definitely. I think this could be a Kimball Walker like UConn team for sure. So I like the play there. There's another team that I like for Final Four that I've got 250 on. They're really hot and cold for me, so their consistency bothers me. But when they're playing right, I think they're one of the best teams in the country, and that's North Carolina. I've got them at plus 2,500 to get to the Final Four. I've got 250 on that. I just think their offense is so good that they get in a rhythm sometimes where they can't miss. And they've got some NBA players on that roster. And if they can just stay consistent for, the last couple weeks of the season, they could go on a run here.
Yeah, you mentioned it. We were probably thinking the same. We probably saw that 25-1 to get to the Final Four, and we're like, this is North Carolina here. They could easily, make a 4-win run. We've seen them play where they can just, light up the scoreboard. At 25-1, I thought that was really good value. I also have a play on them in the Final Four for $100. So I thought that was a pretty good one. I'm going to go flip things, and probably the equivalent to North Carolina on the east to the west, and go Oregon also at 2,500 to get to the Final Four. They
do have to reach the tournament first.
I think they cleared that hurdle this week by beating the 2 Southern teams, and I think we know one of our boys out of the A10 or Big East is going to get the axe, and one of the Oregon's going to get in. But I thought at 2,500. We've seen this team beat elite teams. Now, we've also seen them lose to terrible teams, so getting out of those first two rounds might be the trickiest part of all for this Oregon team. But I thought sort of North Carolina and Oregon were both sort of those wild card teams where the variance could be, they could spring 4 wins, get to that Final Four. They could also probably lose to Montana State in the first round for all we know. But I had 100 on both North Carolina and Oregon as my Final Four participants here at 25-1. Thought that was pretty good value.
Yeah, keep rolling with yours. We've gone through all mine at this point.
We've gone through all yours. I got a couple left. I told you about this one a while back, so I have to at least say Arkansas. I took them at 80-1 on a national championship play, just because I thought that was really, really good value. Other than that little squeaky in the season play there where they dropped their level of play at the start of the year and now towards the end of the year, they've been playing really good basketball. I think they can more than likely handle that. 1,200 to make the Final Four. I put 50. 80-1 to win the national championship. I put 50 on that. Really, really like that. I also already have a real money wager on Arkansas to win the national championship on that one. Another Final Four team I was looking at, it's one we've both liked, and I think Marquette at 20-1 to get to the Final Four. I think that's a pretty good value play there. Yes. We've seen them reel off and get hot. And we've also seen their coach, Shaka Smart, reel off and get hot and make a move in this tournament. So he knows how to play this tournament. I think they can make a run, 20-1 value to just get to the Final Four. I put 100 on. And then lastly, I didn't make a Final Four bet on them. I did make a national championship bet, and that was on Duke at 14-1 to win the national championship. I didn't love their value to get to the Final Four, but I thought 14-1, I think that's pretty good value, so I put 100 on Duke to get to win the national championship. I thought that was pretty good value, too.
Yeah, I'm not so high on Duke. I think they're going to end up, weaving their way through this ranking as these top teams lose and maybe end up with a 1 or a high 2 seed. So they're probably going to get a couple favorable matchups that may help in them reaching the Final Four. But I haven't seen too many shining moments from this Duke team, despite their NBA talent on that roster.
Yeah, that's why I avoided the Final Four. But I thought 14-1. Pretty good value on the 14-1 there for $100 throw. Certainly, that's where I think we split on the Kentucky Duke thing, where I thought there was more value in Duke than there was in Kentucky. Probably the same sort of similar team. One's looking for health, one's looking for consistent play. So I guess that's our $2,000. So I need to cheer on UConn, and you need to cheer on Alabama to pull this thing off. So we can win a big money. I
think if Alabama wins, I may be loaning Vinny some money.
That is correct. All right, so let's switch things up. We got a handful of conference tournaments this week. A handful of these that we've talked about pretty much all year long. A couple of these I think are really, really interesting ones to start out with, and we're going to start out with probably one of my favorite ones, Atlantic Sun Conference Tournament. Liberty comes in at the favorite at plus 115. You got Jacksonville State at a plus 165, Jacksonville at plus 900, Bellarmine at plus 1300, and then it drops off to a couple of the other guys. But Atlantic Sun, we've been focused on it a lot this year. I'm curious, do you have a favorite that you like out of this tournament here?
So a lot of these conference tourneys we're going to go through this week, you're only going to really see, 1 or 2 really clear favorites just because of the strength of the conferences. But this is one that's interesting that I think could go a few different ways. Liberty's got the lowest odds, but I actually really like Jacksonville State. Yeah. I think they've been the most consistent. I think they should be the favorites here. They're my pick to win this conference. And there's a good value bet. You don't have to look much further than Jacksonville. Outside of they're in the same side of the bracket as Liberty, so they're going to have to get a win at Liberty at some point to win this tournament. But they beat Liberty just a few weeks ago, so I think this Jacksonville team is solid enough too. And plus 900, that's worth a peek at as well. But to win the conference, I really like Jacksonville State.
Yeah, you said it. I don't think a Liberty bet would be a good bet here at plus 115. I think there are three teams, all who could easily beat Liberty here. But at the 165, a ton of value with Jacksonville State. Jacksonville really made a push down the stretch until this weekend when they screwed me over pretty good. But nonetheless, they couldn't affect their seed all that much. Last week, Jacksonville State would have had to lose. They would have had to win to, jump them into the standings, which wasn't all that likely. But you mentioned it, Jacksonville at 900. Bellarmine, our early love, which started to drop off. I didn't... 1,300, probably not enough. I think if that thing creeped into 1,600, 1,700, I'd probably give a look. If I was looking for a real long shot, Kennesaw State started the conference season out really, really hot. They really dropped off towards the end, but maybe they can sort of find that magic. And they have a couple good wins versus a couple of these top-tier teams, but at 27-1, not all that bad of value. If you're going to do that, I think Kennesaw can make a run. I would advise also taking their money line throughout the tournament as well, so you can at least get a little bit of that money back if you think they're going to make a run. So we're both on that one. Jacksonville State at plus 165. I think it is a good pick. You mentioned Jacksonville at plus 900. I think we both have sort of fallen off Bellarmine at 1,300, probably not all that great. And I said a long shot, Kennesaw State at 2,700. You see any others in there where you might want to grab it? North Florida has a couple of decent wins on the year, but I just, other than Kennesaw, who had an early hot start, I don't see anybody past Bellarmine who I think could actually win this tournament.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of saying leading into this. I think you're going to have 1, 2, maybe 3 guys that have a real shot, maybe 1 or 2 long shots. But outside of that, there's just no realistic chance for some of these teams, I think.
Yeah, definitely so. So that'll be an interesting one. I think we're both pretty big on Jacksonville State in this one, almost getting 2-1. Let's move on to the Big South Conference, another conference we've been big on. Longwood comes in at the favorite at plus 145, and then Winthrop sits there at plus 210. There's a pretty big drop-off after that. You got Gardner-Webb at plus 500, UNC Asheville at plus 750, and We've liked taking UC Upstate at plus 2,100, but that's usually when they're at home and playing these sort of lower tier teams. They haven't really shown the ability to play with this upper echelon. Let's go with a favorite in this tournament. Are you going to ride Longwood, who's been pretty much dominant throughout this conference, or you're going to take one of these other two behind them?
I'm going to take Winthrop here. I think the value's a little better, and I think Longwood's had a really good year, but they've actually been kind of slowing down here towards as we wrap up the season. And I think Winthrop's kind of been surging here as of late. I think they've won 5 or 6 in a row here. So I'm going to take Winthrop at plus 210.
Yeah, this is going to hurt me to say, but I think the value sits all there at Winthrop at plus 210. They're a known team, too. They win this tournament all the time. They've been the dominant team in the Big South Conference for quite a while. Longwood, this is their first ride. They have been really good throughout. But, basically, I think when that championship game comes and it all sits there and rides, they might get a little nervous, and Winthrop's experience could come into play at plus 210. You think if these two play in the championship game, I don't think that would climb over. And I'm being generous, like a plus 150 if these two played in the championship game. And I think I'm being generous there. I think it would be more like a 130 sort of line for Longwood in that, even as good as Longwood's played. I think there's too much respect there for Winthrop.
Well, and I think that getting 210 with Winthrop, I know it's a new year, but any other year, the past 3 to 5 years, you're going to be getting Winthrop at minus numbers going.
It's I think when we did it last year, it was like minus 145 when we did our conference tournament preview. So
it's rare to get that 210, and like you said, that experience I think is really going to come through. As far as long shots go here, I don't think you can really go too far down this list because there's a huge drop off in talent. The furthest I was willing to go on a value play is Gardner-Webb at plus 500.
Yeah.
That's really only a little better than double of Winthrop, who I think is going to win it. So I might not dabble in too many value plays in this conference.
Yeah, you couldn't talk me into a ton. I looked at Gardner-Webb because they've been hot of late, but even at plus 500, I didn't think there was much there. UNC Asheville's been hot and cold, but at plus 750, I didn't see much there. The only thing you could talk me into Campbell, but they've been really, really poor. But if you're speaking of other teams who have experienced winning this conference, they are one of them. This isn't the NBA, so they have not retained those players who have had those experience. And clearly this is a down season for them. But 24-1, maybe they find something together. But I would not stray really past Longwood or Winthrop. There's a real line after that.
Yeah.
Maybe you throw something on Gardner-Webb, but I don't even think at 500 there's a ton of value there because I think if Gardner-Webb played Longwood or Winthrop, they'd be 2-1 underdogs in that game. And then you're throwing them in versus an Asheville, Upstate, a Campbell, a High Point, where I don't even think they're that much ahead of them. So not a ton of value in there. I think it's a Longwood, Winthrop. And if you were going to take Longwood, I just say take them if they make that championship game because it'll be probably just as easy a value, and you won't have to worry about that semifinal game they play.
Well, it's like you said. If say Longwood and Winthrop meet in the championship game, you might be getting even money Longwood in that game there. So. Yeah. The plus 145 for the whole tournament run isn't much better.
Yeah, definitely so. All right, let's go to another one you've had some fun with. This is your Friday night action.
Ups and downs.
Your Friday night action. Now, this one I did find quite interesting because
you can make a lot of plays here.
I think I cut the line off on everything but like the last four. Horizon League. We got Cleveland State coming in as a favorite at plus 230. Wright State at 390. Northern Kentucky at plus 400. IUPUI Fort Wayne, who's probably been the hottest team in the conference the last couple weeks at plus 500. Oakland at plus 650. Detroit Mercy at plus 1200. And then Youngstown State at plus 2300. Basically I just read off the whole conference other than the four teams that are going to be playing in the play-in games here. But I'm curious how you're reading this tournament because basically you could tell me any of those teams that I read off, and I could probably believe you.
Yeah, you can make an argument for any of those teams of going all the way. But I have a few that I like. Every time I try to get back on board with Cleveland State, they let me down. So I'm going to avoid them. Plus, I think their value compared to these others isn't nearly as great, even though I think they're probably at even playing field with the Wright State and a Northern Kentucky. My favorite play is Northern Kentucky at plus 400. I think that's the best value for the top picks in this tournament. And they've been playing pretty solid. And another one I really like to look at is Oakland at plus 650. They've got experience. They've had a coach that's been there forever, basically. And they play good defense. So those are the two teams I like. But, like you said, sometimes you got to ride the hot team, and IP Fort Wayne is looking pretty solid there as well.
Yeah, this one's weird. And you sort of, if you're going to do this one, you got to manage your money smartly because I don't think it does a lot of good just taking one of these teams. You're going to want one or two of them, especially since they're more than likely all going to end up playing each other here. I liked your Northern Kentucky at 4-1. I don't know if the value's as great there. You missed IUPUI Fort Wayne. I have 500. I do like that value. And then long shot wise, Detroit Mercy at 12-1. They've shown that they can beat a handful of these, top tier teams. So I'd spread my money around Northern Kentucky, Fort Wayne, Detroit Mercy. That being said, the Wright State at plus 390, just, 0.10 off Northern Kentucky. I think that presents decent value too. Basically, the only one I don't think presents value is probably Cleveland State sitting there at plus 230. Because
I don't think they're that much better than these other teams.
That's what I mean. I think even if, Youngstown State at plus 23-1, I don't think Cleveland State is like loads and bounds better than that Youngstown State team. It's just, there's a lot of all good, solid teams, and anyone can beat anyone, and someone's going to get hot. Purdue Fort Wayne's been the hottest, so if you were picking one, maybe that's where I'd go. Detroit Mercy probably presents the best money value at 12-1 there, but I like the Norse, so Norse at 400 probably my first pick, but that Fort Wayne one at 500 is really sort of staring at me pretty good too. All right, we're going to go to another one, and this one's not as deep, but once again, I think the top four teams here all have all beaten each other and have all been beaten by each other. So you could easily talk. This is one where I wish, they'd hack off one of the, Big Ten drags who are 16-12 and just take two of these teams, probably the two teams that meet in the championship game, because I think Loyola Chicago, Northern Iowa, Missouri State, and Drake are all really, really solid, good basketball teams here. So Loyola Chicago at plus 130, Northern Iowa at plus 490, Missouri State at plus 490, and Drake at plus 500. You got a pretty good cutoff line there. Bradley at 700, Southern Illinois at 1900, and pretty much anybody below that, zero chance to really win this tournament. But what are your thoughts on the Missouri Valley here?
Yeah, there was a chance that you could get two teams from this conference in the tournament, and that was for Loyola Chicago to pretty much run the regular season, and then one of these other teams to win the tournament. But Loyola Chicago has kind of struggled this season, and I don't think they've done enough regular season wise to get their at-large, so they're going to have to win this tournament, I believe.
The only hope is they have enough of a name, get to the finals, and then, last-second shot, Northern Iowa or a Drake or a Missouri State, beats them.
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be – I think they're kind of on the bubble right now, and a loss in this tournament is going to probably push them out because there's other teams fighting to get in. Yeah. Teams like some out of the Mountain West or the West Coast Conference that I think may be able to sneak an at-large bid. I don't love the 130 Loyola Chicago here. Yeah. I really do like the two behind them, though. I could see playing both of these two teams behind them in Northern Iowa plus 490 and Missouri State plus 490. Missouri State's a little bit hot and cold.
Yes.
When they're on, they can beat any of these teams, but when they're off, they can lose by 20. So if I had to pick one, I like Northern Iowa.
Yeah, we're in agreement here. I think the play is Northern Iowa at plus 500 here. You just saw them play Loyola Chicago. But nothing separates any of these four teams all that much. Drake's been a little bit, they're probably the coldest one coming in, but we've already seen Drake, more than play with Loyola Chicago. They can easily play with these top teams, but they seem to have the biggest sort of gap where they could end up losing to one of those bottom tier teams there. I think the play is plus 490 at Northern Iowa. I didn't see any of the long shots that I would throw money on. Maybe if you consider Bradley a long shot, but even there, I don't think 700 is good value because I think those four teams are all leaps and bounds. Was there any long shot you thought you could really get behind in this conference? Because I didn't see anything.
No, I don't think there's anybody else outside those top four that really have a legit shot. I don't even think it'd be worth taking a chance on any of those. This is this is a very top-heavy conference. Normally, it's even more top-heavy than this. Normally, you can just say Loyola and it's done. But they've just been weird this year, and I like Northern Iowa and Missouri State. I think those were two solid plays, but outside of that, I don't have any other action.
Yeah, me either. I think you probably grab one of the three, whichever one of the three you like, and let it ride and see what you can do. There. I don't see any value at plus 130 for Loyola Chicago, though. Once again, you're probably better off just waiting till the championship game and taking that, because I don't think that spread would be much over 3 or 4 points. So you're borderlining on a even money bet anyway in that championship game. All right, let's go to the Northeast Conference, and I'm curious if you can find a long shot in this one. I threw a mini long shot in it, but there are two teams in this conference, and there are probably going to be two teams who are going to play for the title in this conference. But Bryant comes in at plus 110. Wagner comes in at plus 190. Long divided line gap here. You got LIU at 600. The Mount St. Mary's at plus 950. Another line and a long gap, and basically you have the rest of the conference here. So any play on this, or basically just wait till the championship game and then make your wager?
Yeah, I don't think it's worth picking one of these top teams for a conference for winning the tournament now. I think, like you said, it's best just to wait. I've got one long shot play that I may dabble. I like Mount St. Mary's at plus 950.
We're on the same wavelength. I was like, if there was a play, it might be the Mount, but even at 950, I didn't think that presented a ton of value because these two, Brian and Wagner are so far ahead of everybody else in this conference. I'd say throw a little money on Wagner at plus 190, maybe, just because they were dominating the conference up until the last 2 weeks. But once again, I guess you get a 2-1 there, but you're going to get even money in the conference final, and you're risking it for a fluky game where, say, a Mount St. Mary's comes in and, steals it from them.
Well, and my thing is the Mount St. Mary's plus 950 might be worth it, but say they match up with Bryant in the championship game, their money line's going to be at least 400 or 500 there anyway.
Correct.
So you're still going to get good value even if you play it game by game. So it's maybe just one you kind of look at each matchup individually and see what you can do there. I don't like too many of the current tournament-wide plays. Yeah,
definitely so. Not much there. Should be interesting to see Brian and Wagner match up in the title game, though, if they get there. Should be a good matchup. Ohio Valley. This one, once again, is really interested, and I'm going to be a little disappointed that two teams probably don't come out of this conference either, because I think both Belmont and Morehead State are really good basketball teams. The problem is Murray State is a really, really good basketball team, and when they make like Sweet 16 bets, I have my eye right now already on the Racers making a run there. They're a really, really good team, and basically they've blown out Belmont twice, blown out Morehead State once, and had a semi-close game in Morehead State. So Murray State's minus 175, Belmont plus 240, Morehead State at plus 900. I don't think you could conceivably pick any other team other than those three, but anything you got handicapping this one? Because I think I'm like just an overall total pass. Maybe throw a little on Morehead State at plus 900.
Yeah, you hit it right on the head there. That's exactly what I have wrote down. Murray State, clear-cut favorite. If you want to throw some at somebody, Morehead State, I think, is the only one you can look at. But I can see it now. I can see Murray State getting a 12 or a 13 seed knocking off my balls in the first round. They're the kind of team that's going to knock somebody off, I think.
Yeah. The Belmont at 240, I don't see really any value, because if they get to the championship game, with the way Murray State has owned them, you're going to get 2-1 value there. So basically,
maybe even better.
You're taking a risk that is not needed in that one. So Murray State at minus 175. Do you just throw the house on it, or do you sort of stay away from that too? They've been undefeated, and this is one of those just my rules. If you're undefeated in the regular season conference, I don't really like taking you in the random conference tournament here. So I'm just stay away, even though they've dominated it so easy.
Yeah, I don't think there's any real play here. Just kind of a stay away, and we'll see what happens. Probably some good plays, like you said, in the NCAA tournament with Murray State.
Yeah, that show coming in a couple weeks. Be prepared. All right, Patriot League Conference. This one's an interesting one, and it's always a difficult one to handicap because all these schools sort of play on their home court, so when somebody goes somewhere, they usually end up losing out. Colgate, big favorite at minus 210. I thought that was a little high because I thought a couple of these teams could make a run here. Specifically, the next one, Boston University at plus 550. I'm not huge on Navy at plus 600, but I do have my eye also on Loyola Maryland at plus 1800. I thought that presented pretty decent value there. I'm curious how you handicapped this Patriot League conference.
So, I got looking at this. I haven't watched a whole lot of games in the Patriot League, to be perfectly honest. But once I started doing some research, I actually, I kind of differ from you. I really like Navy here at the plus 600.
You like Navy.
I looked. They've got the best road schedule in the conference, road record in the conference.
They've been really, really good. I think I can't wrap my head around Navy winning anything unless David Robinson is walking through the door, which I don't think he is. But
using your logic, you were saying going places and losing. Yes. They're the best team on the road in this conference this year. So that's my play. I like Navy plus 600.
Yeah, I think I would pass on the Boston at plus 550, though I have my eye on it. I think I'd grab a long shot and Loyola Maryland. They have some pretty good wins this year. At 18-1, I thought it presented pretty good value. The only difficult thing there is basically they're playing on the road pretty much throughout. Once they start playing the Navies and the Bostons, they get a cheap first-round win, and then they have two difficult games to get in there. But 18-1, I sort of like Loyola Maryland. So if I was grabbing a long shot, that's what I'd grab in this one. But Colgate certainly has been the best team in this league. But I looked at Navy. I think my mind locked up at the thought of Navy getting in the NCAA tournament. So I think I have a bit of a bias there. We'll move on to the Southern Conference, and this one got very interesting from the middle of the season when basically I treated this one a little bit like the Murray State Conference. But Furman now comes in as a favorite at plus 130. UTC Chattanooga comes in at plus 225. Watford at 500. VMI at 1200. And I think we got to throw Sanford in there because they do have a handful of solid wins. They also seem to lose random games by 20, but they have beaten a couple of these top-tier teams, so they at least have to be in here at 1,600. I'm curious your read on this tournament because I think this whole thing is flipped. We go back a month ago. I think we both are not even paying attention. UTC's in by, a wide margin here.
So you could look at this a couple of ways. You think you could, if you still think Chattanooga is as good as they are, they just had some hiccups or something. Yeah. You're getting good value with someone who should be the favorite at a little over 2-1 there. But I think the play here would be to sprinkle it between the next three up in Wofford, VMI, and Samford. I think those are three teams that have shown they're all capable of beating the best teams in this conference and could go on a run in this tournament. And you're getting really good value, especially with VMI and Samford there at plus 1,200 and plus 1,600.
The only problem is every time I have bet on VMI this season, they've lost. So I think I'm responsible for like 10 of their 12 losses on this season because it seems like every time I bet on them, they let down and lose, and then they go on a winning streak when I leave them alone. But I think the value play is just to take Chattanooga at the plus 225 because they were such dominant. That being said, Furman has been just as dominant this last half of the season, sort of found their rhythm, really can shoot the ball. Long shot wise, I think Samford at 1,600 is pretty good value because they've shown the ability to certainly beat these top tier teams. I don't know if they can, consistently go on a stretch where they win 3 or 4 games, in a row. They haven't shown that capability, but they've certainly shown the ability to step up and play with Furman and Chattanooga. Watford at 500, I didn't perceive a ton of value in there. I thought VMI and Sanford presented more value than Watford, but they're a known power in the Southern Conference too, so I think they're getting a little bit more respect than the other two, who are basically also rans in this conference for most. But I think the Chattanooga at plus 225, really decent value there, especially if you were big on them about a month ago. All right, let's go to the Sun Belt, and I'm very curious here because I didn't have a favorite in this one. I was searching. Georgia State at plus 270, South Alabama at plus 410, Texas State at plus 430, Appy State at plus 600. I'm going to go a little deeper because I think these other teams could definitely make a little bit of a jump too. Troy at 900, Louisiana Lafayette at 1200. And Coastal Carolina at 1,300. This one was weird. I think it's really hard to handicap because basically none of these teams have played with any type of consistency all season long. So are you grabbing onto one, or are you just going to sort of spray gun it here and take 2 or 3 and hope one hits?
Spray gun is right. I was saying you could put all these teams on a dartboard and throw 3 darts for your picks because outside of maybe the bottom 4 teams, everyone's got a legit shot to win this year. So I would recommend, if you're going to pick somebody, go with the higher value, i.e. like a Louisiana or a Coastal Carolina. I like those teams, and I think on a good day they can play with the best teams in this conference. But if you want to roll the hot team, Georgia State at plus 270, they've won like 7 in a row. But you may be better off just kind of betting these games as they come up and see how you do there, just because I don't think there's any way you could legitimately lean towards any of these teams.
The only thing I've liked South Alabama and the way they've played most of the year, but they also throw in duds all the time, especially last week during the week when they threw in a dud. So, you don't know when you're going to get that. Appy State's the defending champ, so at plus 600, they bring back most of the same team. Maybe they can make a run. Early in the year, they were out in front, but they've sort of fallen off too. But honestly, I can say I would not bet on anyone in this conference tournament. I'd look game to game and see if you see any sort of perceived value. I do sort of like your Lafayette at 12-1. I thought that was pretty solid value for at times when they've looked pretty good. Granted, also at times it wouldn't stun me if they lost to La Monroe or something as well. So, I think that's where this just gets weird. If I had to pick, I'm going Appy State at 600, South Alabama at 410, but there's not a lot of conviction behind those two picks there. All right, let's get to the big one. The West Coast Conference tournament here. Zags coming off the St. Mary's loss, so minus 390 to win this tournament. I think they've pretty much won it every year, but maybe like one in the last 30 years. So that's a bit of a factor here. St. Mary's at plus 600. I thought this was interesting. Santa Clara comes in as the third favorite at plus 1,100. San Francisco at plus 30, and BYU at plus 35. Any chance Gonzaga loses this tournament, or they probably shouldn't have lost that game over the weekend because now they're going to roll through the tournament pretty easy?
Yeah, I think with that loss, they're gonna ride through this tournament pretty good. I think prior to that loss, I may have looked at a St. Mary's or a Santa Clara. Yeah. But I think, honestly, you get to the championship game, you're probably going to get these values in the championship game with some of these. But I think maybe worth putting a little on, just for the fun of it. I think San Francisco is good enough when they're playing right to take it. And even BYU, I think, is a pretty experienced and consistent team. So I would skip past the St. Mary's and Santa Clara and maybe make a play on San Francisco or BYU. but you're going to get really good odds at whoever matches up against Gonzaga game by game through this tournament. I wouldn't take the first game because they're probably going to be playing some nobody. But semifinals and finals, you may could try to get the upset again, but I don't see Gonzaga dropping 2 the last 2 weeks of the season.
Yeah, you summed it up pretty easy. If I was making a play on this, I'd grab the San Francisco and BYU, see if you can take a token run at it, because I think both are capable of at least making the championship game. I don't know if either are capable of beating Gonzaga from what I've seen. But, maybe Gonzaga snoozes through, a little bit. Granted, they won't be in, St. Mary's road gym, and they've shown they can beat both the San Francisco and BYU on their road gym. So it's hard to really grab anybody but Gonzaga, especially after the loss over the weekend. But I think your value for your money would probably be to grab the San Francisco at 30-1 or BYU at 35-1. See if those two, who are more than capable of playing good basketball, get hot, get in that championship game. You could certainly try to middle it somewhere in there, too, if either of those two got in there with those odds of 30 and 35-1. All right, so that does our conference tournament preview for week 1. We'll be back next week for sure to preview the rest of the conference tournaments. We'll have a big show on that on Monday. Get deep into it. Let's get into our games of the week. Not a ton on Monday. A couple solid ones. Baylor versus Texas at +1.5. San Diego State versus Wyoming at also +1.5 for Wyoming. Baylor, Texas, any chance Texas can pull this off? They haven't really shown the ability to beat these type of teams, but Baylor, if they struggle ever, it's usually on the road in a conference game.
Yeah, Texas, they've been really solid at home this year, but the problem is they're averaging about 15 points less a game than this Baylor team. And so I think Baylor's going to keep riding their momentum, and they're going to go in and get the win pretty easily tonight, I think, actually.
Yeah, definitely. So San Diego State, Wyoming, 1.5 for Wyoming. A little shocked they were getting points here, but then I started looking at it, and I'm like, San Diego State really sort of needs this game. It starts to get really, really murky for them if they lose this game. They got another one in the week. This is one of those 2-for weeks with a makeup game. So I don't know if I'm as aggressive on Wyoming as I was earlier, but I certainly think Wyoming's just the better team here.
Yeah, I really wanted to instinctively take Wyoming here, guys. They're undefeated at home on the season. But, looking at it, and this, like you said, this is the time of year that we really look at desperation and need for the win. Wyoming's already locked up an at-large bid, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But San Diego State, they're kind of right there on the outside looking in, and they need a signature win. And going into Wyoming's arena would be that big signature win that they need, I think, to get them into the tournament. So no play here. It's going to be a great game between two good Mountain Conference teams. But San Diego State's defense was really good. I think they're holding teams to an average of like 59 or 60 points per game. One of the best defenses in the country. So it should be exciting. But I'm not making a play here. It's too close. I think that's why they gave Wyoming those points, is they're trying to get people to take that Wyoming bet.
You say exciting if you enjoy missed shots.
I think Wyoming shoots about 35% from three.
Yes, but do they do it for San Diego State? Because I don't think anybody shoots even 30% versus them.
I will say I kind of looked at the under here, but by the time I had gotten to it, it had already dropped. It had already been bet down. I think it opened at about 135. I would have liked that.
I think it was, there were sharps sitting at the casino window as it opened and just hit the under on that one. All right, let's move to Tuesday. This is really the biggest day of the week. We're going to go with a big one out of the Big East, Providence versus Villanova. I did an 8-point line here. Providence has been basically playing with fire for about 2 to 3 weeks here, but always seems to come out the victor. Not really a meaningful game, maybe a little bit in terms of seeding, but should be an entertaining game nonetheless, Providence versus Villanova.
Yeah, you've got Providence in the top 10. They've kind of been sitting there all year. Villanova, despite all their struggles, they've played a strong enough schedule, and they're right outside the top 10. They're playing really good right now. I agree with you. I think Villanova is going to be getting points coming into this. I think if it's less than, 5 or 6, I'll be all over Villanova just because I think Providence is due to drop one here. Yeah. They've just been really struggling and barely. They've got the highest luck rating I've ever seen on Ken Palm. They just keep getting these games that they are pretty much should have lost, and they still pull out the win. I think Villanova is the better team than Providence. So I would definitely take them to win at home there.
Yeah, definitely. So Dayton versus Richmond. This should be entertaining. Richmond has been playing pretty solid of late. Dayton continues their sort of hot and cold play. I made Richmond about a 2.5 point favorite here. I don't think Richmond's a tournament team yet, but I do think if they could go on a little run here to close out the season, they at least put themselves in the mix. So I thought this was a pretty important game here for both Dayton and the Spiders. So I think this is a big one for the winner.
Yeah, I definitely won't have any action on here just because it's hard to get a read on either one of these teams. But like you said, they both need it. So the motivation factor is there for both of them. You've probably got the line right on the head, the 2.5 for the home team. But it should be a good watch, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely so. Toledo versus Buffalo. Toledo, every time they've come up versus one of these top teams in the conference, basically has torched them. Buffalo has played pretty good basketball of late. I got Toledo going there being a favorite by 1.5 points. I think I base that off Toledo really beating up on a couple of the other top tier teams in the MAC. But with the way Buffalo's playing, I'm really interested to see where this line sits.
Yeah, Buffalo's been playing really well. They've won about 8 straight, I think. They had a little dip starting with that loss to Toledo in Toledo about a month ago. So I'd probably lean Toledo here. I think they're the better team despite going on the road to Buffalo. Yeah. And Buffalo's won a lot here, so they maybe do a loss.
Yeah, this is also going to be a fun conference tournament to sort of preview. Yeah. I'm really interested. Toledo's going to be the favorite, but I think there are a couple teams sitting right there that could, maybe sneak in there and beat them. So I'm really interested in that one. Kansas versus TCU on Tuesday night. Kansas goes to TCU. I made TCU about a 4.5 point favorite. Might be a little low, but I do think that hovers Kansas. This will be 2 road games in a row. Did they bounce back here versus a loss over the weekend versus Baylor?
Yeah, we already saw, a few times this year where Kansas, in their bounce back game, they perform really well. Yeah. Now, some of those are usually at home, so it'll be interesting to see how they bounce back going to another road game against another defensively tough team in TCU. But I like Kansas here. I think they're going to take care of business and get a big win on the road after that loss to Baylor.
Yeah, me too. Next up, we got a couple of Big Ten ones to go over. I know this is going to be the bane of your existence, but Michigan State plays Michigan. Michigan 2-point favorites in this one. Honestly, there's no telling. Michigan State looked terrible for 2 weeks straight and then beats Purdue. Michigan is basically a 500 team. Granted, they have no bad losses, but anyway, what do you make of Michigan State, Michigan here?
Yeah, my hatred for the love of Big Ten grows, especially here when they're just, terrible teams playing each other. And then, they're saying, oh, it's because they're 2 great teams. But no, I don't see anything in these 2 teams that makes me like them. I want to lean Michigan State between these 2 just because of their strength defensively and how they can force turnovers. But I really don't. I won't have a play on this one. I don't like either of these teams. I don't think either of these teams should be in the NCAA tournament, but they both will.
Yeah, good luck at getting that. Next up, we'll go to the A10 Saint Bonaventures versus VCU. VCU, I put as 6-point favorites here. Bonnie's been on a little bit of a run lately. Granted, they can't play St. Louis every week of the season. Can they go into VCU and get a win here, or they sort of fall back to earth in this one?
I don't know if they get the win, but if they're getting 6 points, I'd probably be all over it. At this point, I don't think anything they can do in the regular season will get them in the tournament. They're going to have to win their conference bid and their conference tournament. So they may just kind of be waiting for that to really make their play. But getting points against VCU, that many, I'd probably take the Bonnies.
Yeah. All right. We'll move back to the Big Ten. Purdue goes to Wisconsin. I've made Wisconsin a 1-point favorite here. I think this is about a pick 'em. Purdue, I think, is really sort of, we've watched them started to drop off a little bit here to the point where I think they shouldn't even, they don't deserve a number 1 seed. They still might get it, depending on what happens in the conference tournament. But I just don't like what I see from them. Wisconsin is basically just Wisconsin. You know exactly what you're going to get from them. Where do you think of this one? Purdue bounce back off this one, or you think they drop 2 straight on the road here?
I think they're going to drop 2 straight. I think their defensive play is really coming back to bite them now. They've got I think the 130th ranked defense in the country. And Wisconsin, like you said, they're playing traditional Wisconsin basketball. They were playing it earlier this year. That's when I kind of thought highly of them. They kind of dipped a little bit, had some rough games, including a loss to Rutgers. But they're playing really strong right now, so I'd have to lean Wisconsin in this one.
Yeah. Cincinnati goes to Houston. Cincinnati's probably played their way out of the tournament. If they want to throw their hat back in the ring, this is pretty much a must win. I made Houston about 13.5-point favorite here. Houston has a little bit of a tough week because they're on, twofer as well. So any chance Cincinnati goes into Houston, springs an upset here? Yeah.
I don't think there's an upset here. Maybe a cover on the point spread, but I think Cincinnati's kind of toast right now.
Yeah, so do I. I think interesting game in the Pac-12. Arizona versus USC. Arizona's been pretty solid with these good teams coming into their place. Do they have the same sort of juice to go into USC and win? I made Arizona about a 2-point favorite here.
Yeah, this is one I'm really going to look at and see how much USC's getting.
I noticed during our tournament championship preview, neither of us seemed really to jump on those Arizona Final Four championship lines. Now, I will admit both were really bloated, so but I did find that interesting. Neither of us really jumped on Arizona there.
Yeah, I think Arizona's kind of been a pretender all year long. I've had that opinion for a while now, and I actually surprised I didn't take that Colorado pick. I kind of wish I had. I've been all over Colorado over the past couple of weeks, been making a lot of money on them. But this is a really solid USC team. Now, I don't think, a home court there is not huge, but, I guess it's just a little bit of travel. But
it might be huge because Arizona fans who have
they're not at Arizona is the advantage. But I could see USC winning this one. So if USC's getting points here, that might be a good value money line play.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see where this line sits.
Yeah.
All right, let's move to Wednesday. And I think there was a team here where we both sort of wanted to grab in our Final Four national championship type things, but I think we're also getting a little tournament nervous that they might not end up in the tournament, and we might have to grab them for NIT futures here. Xavier goes to St. John's. This isn't necessarily a game of the week, but I think Xavier hasn't lost a game that makes them look bad here, but I think this is one that they have to win because they're in a really bad run right now.
Yeah, I think they've lost 5 out of their last 6 yet again. I think going into the last win, they had lost 3 or 4 in a row and kind of got a big win. But this Xavier team, I think, is capable of playing with anybody in the Big East, and they've shown that in some close games. But unfortunately, they're playing a St. John's team that just came off a loss against DePaul that I think they should have won that game because the St. John's team has been pretty hot. At this point, I think Xavier, even if they get this win, I think it's going to be conference tournament play. I think they're going to have to get to like the semis of the Big East tournament, at least to get consideration for an at-large bid. But I do think they're good enough. And we'll talk about this on our conference preview show next week. If they're getting good value,
I think we both have that on
for a Big East champion because, like I said, I think they're capable of beating anybody in that conference. So. And as we both know, the Big East Conference tournament's always nuts.
Yes.
I don't know if I'd have a lean in this one. I may lean Xavier just because St. John's their offensive consistency. They rely on too many shots, and when they go cold, they go really cold, like they did on me yesterday. So, but it should be a good game.
Yeah, should be interesting. Especially, we've been on Providence all year long, and now the end of the season's coming, and we're looking for any reason not to take Providence in that Big East tournament. So, always fun college basketball, the roller coaster ride. Next up, Rutgers versus Indiana. Rutgers goes to Indiana. I made Indiana about a 6-point favorite. Rutgers, I just have no clue. Went on a winning streak of great proportions, and now, once again, are terrible and awful to watch. I don't even know. I guess they're sort of in the tournament, but I think this is one of the teams, you complain about getting in the tournament, because basically they had a little 4-game run there where they beat a couple of what we call the upper echelon teams in the Big Ten, and sandwiched in between there, they've been really, really bad. I think they need this win versus Indiana to even sort of talk about them getting in the tournament. But Rutgers versus Indiana, what do you make of this one?
Yeah, and these two teams are really close to each other in Big Ten standings. So this is could be a separation game for the two of them. I'm interested to see, you've got Rutgers getting 6. That might be worth a take there. But it's tough going Indiana and coming out with wins. Yeah. So I don't know if I'd take an outright win for Rutgers, but depending on how many points they're getting, they might be worth a look.
Yeah. LSU versus Arkansas. I made Arkansas a 3.5-point favorite. That might be a little low. That might be more hope on my side where I can grab Arkansas even after getting screwed over the weekend by a banked-in 3 with no time left. Score that one up for the Gamblers Hall of Fame. LSU, Arkansas. Can LSU sort of defend their way into a win here versus Arkansas, or Arkansas continues their hot pace here?
No, I think Arkansas, they've still got hopes for winning the SEC conference. All we need, all Kentucky, Tennessee, or Arkansas need is an Auburn loss and the 3 behind them to go flawless to step up and take their spot. So Arkansas is not going to drop the ball here, especially at home where they've been really, really good in Bud Walton. So Arkansas is going to win big against LSU. If it's 3.5, I'll be putting a lot of money on Arkansas.
Yeah. Stephen F. Austin versus New Mexico State. Stephen F. Austin sort of found a good little form here going into New Mexico State to play this one. I made New Mexico State a 7-point favorite, but I'm interested to see probably for our WAC conference tournament preview if one or two of these teams might be able to hang with New Mexico State in this conference tournament. So I'm curious if they can go in there, at least give them a game. I don't expect them to win, but I am curious about if Stephen F. Austin can sort of hang with them. They couldn't hang with them when New Mexico came there, but I'm interested in this one. They're playing better now.
Yeah, the rematches are always usually a closer game, and I think this is going to be in single digits, but it's going to be kind of right there. So I think your 7 points is kind of on the edge. If it gets closer to 10, I'd definitely look at Stephen F. Austin.
Yeah. This one's interesting. I wanted to, we talked about Wyoming playing San Diego State here. We both think Wyoming's pretty solidly in, but does it get to be a little bit more nervous time if, say, they drop that San Diego State game? Then they have this game, pretty much a day later, going to UNLV. UNLV is playing pretty good basketball of late, certainly at home.
Yeah.
I made UNLV a favorite in this one. If they're making San Diego State a favorite in Wyoming, I think Wyoming going on the road into UNLV, they'll probably be an underdog in this one. Do we get nervous with Wyoming if they lose these two? And what do you make of UNLV the last couple weeks?
Yeah, you do. I think you do get a little closer to the edge there, especially if there's some upsets in some conferences and start taking away some bubble seats. But I don't know. It like you said, it kind of starts with that game tonight on Monday for really what you think going into that game Wednesday against UNLV. UNLV I've really loved taking, especially at home. So it should be a good matchup. I don't know what that line's going to be. Wyoming, I think they'd be able to score a little bit better against UNLV than San Diego State. That might be a game you could look at the over, whereas playing San Diego State, they've got the under. Just kind of different styles there. I don't know if I'd have a play on that one. It should be another good game, but I still like Wyoming. I've played them a lot this year, and they've been good to me.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see what they get seeded wise and how much respect the Mountain West sort of gets shown this year. With non-traditional power Boise State out in front, though Boise's been a pretty good basketball team the last handful of years. But it'll be interesting to see how many get in there. Speaking of fringe contenders playing Houston, Temple goes to Houston. Basically, the exact same question with Cincinnati. I think Temple's a little bit better than Cincinnati, though I made the spread a little bit bigger. Any chance Temple can go in there, maybe sneak an upset, sort of toss their hat back in the tourney ring here?
No, this is kind of the same situation with Cincinnati. I don't think we're going to get an upset. But I think the points could be close just because the games Houston's playing on Tuesday night and then playing again on Thursday.
Yeah.
So I think covering the spread is definitely a possibility for this Temple Owls team that plays pretty good basketball every now and then. But I don't think there's a chance they pull off the upset.
Yeah. All right, back to the Big Ten. Now, on a level, how much are you hoping Michigan gets swept this week and end up at 500? Surely they can't put a 500 Michigan into the tourney here. Iowa goes to Michigan coming off that loss, I think it was about 2 weeks ago, where Michigan went in there and got the win. Iowa, Michigan, I made Iowa a 2-point favorite here. What do you see in this one?
I think Iowa's been playing pretty solid basketball. Their offense is really good. Played more consistent lately than they were earlier in the year when you were kind of down on them. I think they're one of the better teams in the Big Ten, kind of right there with Wisconsin. And as Purdue's falling down, I look for Wisconsin and Iowa to do good in the tournament, conference tournament. And the other thing, I really do want Michigan to not make the postseason here. And one thing, so if they get swept this week, how much do you think it factors in the Juwan Howard situation? Do you think they hold that against them at all if they're on the bubble?
It's hard to say because they probably don't want to show highlights of the coach, but they also do want to show highlights because they grab every former Fab Five highlight they can. Even though they hated them back in the early '90s, now they're planted all over their highlight reels. So it's really hard to say. I remember maybe it was 10 to 12 years ago that Georgia team that was like 500 worked their way somehow in the NCAA tournament because they had a sort of similar where they had 15 losses, but they were all versus semi-quality teams, and then they made a little run in the tournament. So it's hard to get a read whether they want Michigan and Juwan Howard in there. I think they do want Michigan in there because they like having that brand in there, but I don't know if they want the coach fighting video replayed 400 times either. So a hard one to grasp. I will say I'm pushing a little bit for a Michigan sweep too because I don't want them in there. I want somebody who I enjoy watching, say a Belmont who plays fun.
San Diego State.
Yes, San Diego State would be one. All right, speaking of WAC, I talked about being interested in looking at this one. Utah Valley, Grand Canyon, two more teams who I think could make a run in that WAC tournament. Very interested to see how this game plays out. I made Grand Canyon a 3.5-point favorite here at home.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I think you've got to give Grand Canyon a little bit of the edge here, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if Utah Valley goes in and gets the win. They're both
coming off a good win versus Seattle.
Yeah. And that's been a tough Seattle team to beat this year. So yeah, like you said, that's a really good quality win. But I'd have to lean Grand Canyon here.
Yeah.
I don't know if the Utah Valley can pull off two in a row.
Yeah, but certainly on the road in Phoenix. Fresno State, San Diego State. Sort of the same thing here. San Diego State has a tough game on the road versus Wyoming, comes back home. This Fresno State team hasn't been able to really beat the top tier teams, but do you think sort of San Diego State needs to get a sweep here this week, or do you think they can sort of live another day if they split, the two games here?
I think a win over Wyoming in Wyoming would be really good for them. That even drop into Fresno would be okay, but a sweep would be really good for the San Diego State team. So I think they'll come even more motivated if they beat Wyoming. If they lose to Wyoming, I think they're going to need a really good run in the conference tournament. But this is another one you might want to be looking late Wednesday night for that line to drop and get the underplay here, because that's going to be like a 45-40 game. Fresno State
for sure, especially in San Diego State. If that thing gets to 100 and combined points, I'd be freaking stunned. All right, that does it for our games of the week. It's been an action-packed show. We talked about our tournament favorites to win the national championship, some of our Final Four favorites to get in there. We previewed the first week of the conference tournaments, a handful of good picks to maybe run with, a couple futures in there, win yourself some money. And then we got into the best games of the week. Be sure to follow our man, Dynamite David, on Twitter to get all his picks. Dynamite, where can we find you?
You can follow me on Twitter at GLN Dynamite_D. I'm putting out what I call the daily dynamite. I'm making picks across. I've been focusing mostly on NCAA basketball, but every now and then I'll jump into the NBA or some other sports for some action. But I'm going to keep it going year round, so be sure to follow.
Yeah, be sure to like and subscribe. We got a lot of college basketball shows coming up. We'll be back Friday to preview the last handful of games on the weekend, talk about some of these conference tournaments where they sit, and then Monday we'll be here for a full big preview of all the conference tournaments playing out next week. And then we got our big NCAA tournament show and our big NCAA tournament betting show. So we got a lot of shows coming up in the next couple weeks. Want to be sure to get in on all of that action. Be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our action. That's our show, and we're out.
Good! They did it! There's the pass to Laettner. Puts it on. Whitburn!